So I wanted to give a little newbie how-to on this PitchLogic baseball. Man, this thing is it's awesome. But just like anything with technology, there's no point in buying it if you're not actually going to use it. You don't have to be a veteran coach. You don't really have to know anything about technology. I guess all you really need to do is be able to read, watch some videos to learn how to at least read the data, which will then hopefully allow you to either coach your kid or your team with it. So these numbers aren't just going to innately tell you what your kid is doing wrong or what you're doing wrong. There is some trial and error to it, and you have to be able to either feel for it or see for it. I would suggest using video to go along with this. The cool part about this ball is the technology is inside of it. So that's there to stay, and they will be pushing out more metrics on the app as well as more fun stuff through the app. And I'm guessing that you'll probably be able to have a video feature with it, as well as some version of like 3D, 4D arm ball movement and things like that, to where you can get a lot better idea of what exactly is going on through that arm, through that hand, and through the ball. So what you do get with this ball is a ton of amazing metrics, more than competitor balls, and pretty much exactly the same along the lines of some really high-end equipment, thousands of dollars, and you've got it in this $250 ball. So that's really, really, really awesome. There is going to need to be some work put into reading the metrics, reading the numbers that are being spit out, and comparing that to good pitches, bad pitches, how it felt, how your spin is relating to velocity and rifle spin and movement, and your arm slot as well as the access of the ball. Like I said, I'm new to this. I just got this ball. I got it for my son, for myself to help coach him, but wanted to put this out there to maybe help some people. So here you see the clock, and what you'll see the yellow arm, which is the actual arm of the thrower. So that is where their arm is at, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, wherever they are. The blue arm is going to be the axis in which the ball is spinning. So if it's back spinning, that is the axis, the tilt of the ball. And you can mess around with having exactly the same as the arm, a little up, a little down. I mean, you're going to get variations. Not everybody is exactly the same. And then what you're going to get is right next to that, you will see a bar, and the higher that's up, that is the more that the ball is fighting gravity. Or pushing that way, I guess I should say, because when you're curveball, you're actually going with gravity. But so where that blue axis is, and then if you look at that bar graph, the ball is going to fight that way harder. So the higher it is, the harder it's going to run that way. If it's a breaking ball and it's going down to say 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, the higher that bar is, the harder that ball is fighting down. So these three numbers, pretty simple. Velocity or speed, that's how many miles per hour. That's the big one that so many people like. Backward extension is going to be how far the arm is going back from the set position, and forward extension is going to be how far out in front the ball is from the set position, wherever the ball was set at on release. And it's literally as the fingers come off the ball is where the extension point is going to be. Here you're seeing the big sexy number, total spin, revolutions per minute. Right below that is spin efficiency, and that's just in terms of when the ball is spinning. There's no rifle spin, so like a football, it is how efficiently that ball is spinning to get the most out of itself. Below that, you've got backspin, which would be your 12 to 6 or 6 to 12, however you want to talk about it. Straight up and down spin. And so the more that somebody's axis is tilted, the more they're going to get side spin. Don't get caught up too much in that backspin, side spin not being, where you think it should be in terms of how high it should be, because a lot of that's going to depend on your axis and your release point in terms of how over the top, how sidearm you are. If you're throwing completely sidearm, your side spin is going to be off the charts. If you're throwing completely overhand, then the backspin is going to be there. It's more about that spin efficiency, which you should be worried about, trying to get that obviously as close to 100% as you can. What you're looking at here with your vertical horizontal movement, that's the up down movement, left right movement, depending upon the pitch. Here you can see it's only 1 inch, but that was because the person throwing this ball was only like 25 feet away from the target, which is a really good thing with this ball. Is you'll see later we got it down to where we're almost touching the net when releasing it, and it's still registered. You're looking here at the rifle spin. That actually used to be the spin efficiency. When you click on spin efficiency, it changes to rifle spin. And right here you see 0. That's pretty awesome. And so when I'm throwing, or my son's throwing fastball, spin efficiency is big time. More so when I'm getting into off-speed pitches, it seems to be a little bit more beneficial. Like when you're talking slider, change-up, curveball, things like that. Trying to look at that rifle spin, which is the spin that doesn't help you. You think about like a slider that just doesn't go anywhere, it just kind of floats. You're getting that football spin, or they say rifle because when you shoot a bullet and it's spinning like that. So that's what that number is. And I find that personally to be a lot more beneficial when you're talking about not a fastball. There is technology in the ball. It does need to communicate with your phone or your iPad or whatnot. So it does need to charge. It's simple. It's just like any other charger. You just put the ball right on top and it charges. We don't always have the luxury of going places. You can see right here, it instantly reads. It's reading from very, very close. And so it's nice to not have to sit there and wait to get these readings. It's nice that for the most part, you can get almost every single metric to read accurately, even from a super, super, super close spot. You saw right there, he was throwing and he was literally almost touching the net. You can go through your iPad or some sort of a tablet. You can go through your phone. You can also send printouts, so you can get an Excel sheet to break it down and make it easier to compare and contrast. You can mark specific pitches on what the pitch is, if it was good, if you would rate it as a 10, a 1, because sometimes it's hard if you're throwing 40 pitches to remember which ones are which. But yeah, it's nice to have that right there, right in front of you. I could shoot this up to my TV, so as soon as he finishes throwing, he can look at it and he can compare and contrast in his feeling. Well, it felt like this, and this is what number it read out. You can pop some video on there to put your readouts right there and look at it and say, okay, how'd this feel coming out of your hand? Look how this came out of your hand. Look at the spin rate. Look at the axis in terms of what it was spinning at. How close was it to your arm angle? How much was it different? This one was at a 2. This one was at a 1.5. And look at the spin rate. Look at the efficiency. Look at the rifle spin. Look at the movement. It just opens it up to where you can talk so much more. What was the Magnus force on this pitch when I held my fingers like this? You can literally put it right on the pitch before you even throw it, that you're going to do whatever you want to do to it. And you can kind of label that however you want to label it, or label it after, I guess I would say, because it has to register at first. So much stuff that you can that you can do with this ball and help you and whoever you're trying to work with, whether it's yourself or somebody else, to get instant feedback specifically. Somebody that I just came into contact with, somebody who's not super young. And they've thrown a pitch basically their whole life a certain way, and all of a sudden they get to mess with this, and they start learning different ways to throw stuff. So it's super, super awesome. Now here's a perfect example of a compare and contrast. You can see the arm slot, so you see the yellow arm, and you can compare and contrast in terms of, and it could be a fastball, it could be a changeup, it could be a fastball, it could be a curveball. No matter what, you're trying to keep those in the exact same arm slot so the hitter can't tell the difference. But you can tell how the ball is spinning on a different axis from these two. And if it's the same pitch, 2-seam fastball, 4-seam fastball, changeup, whatever, yeah, you're trying to keep that consistently the same every single time unless you specifically are working on something to change it. Now, if one is a fastball and one is a changeup, then you got to kind of look at that and say, okay, is this helping me? Is this hurting me? You can use video analysis to say, can I see the difference out of the hand with this? And these are the things where it's a great tool, but it's how you use that tool. So here you have two different pitches. You have a changeup and a 2-seam fastball. The obvious thing here is that either the changeup's too fast or the fastball's not fast enough. There's not a big enough difference. You'll notice that the backwards extension, forward extension are almost identical. You'll also notice that the spin rate, there's far less spin rate on the changeup, which that's kind of going to be a natural thing because you're throwing with different fingers. A lot of times you're cutting through the inside of it a little bit more. But you're still working on that spin efficiency, and it's a way in which to take a look at it and say, okay, how is this working? Why is this like this? Why is this not like this? Just another tool for you to be able to kind of compare and contrast those two and be able to look at that and say, okay, hey, let's see what happens when I try to get a better spin rate. Not necessarily spin efficiency, but spin rate on my changeup, and what happens? How does that feel? What does the ball do? Okay, now how come my fastball's like this, my changeup's like this? What do I need to do here? How do I need to hold it differently? How do I need to come through it a little bit differently? And it gets those conversations started and gets you and your player or just yourself really thinking and working on that stuff. So we have biggest two things here are going to be the rifle spin and the extension. So normally you would say, oh, hey, well, you want to get more extension. You get more behind the ball, the batter gets to see it less time, so on and so forth. But here, when that happens, it's more rifle spin. So it's about, trying to get that extension, but not at the expense of totally destroying the spin on the ball. And so it's something to work on and say, okay, good extension, but hey, let's work on staying through the ball better. You came, outside of it, you came inside of it, and you can see that based on positive or negatives on those numbers. And you look at this, same kid, roughly the same spin rate, the further extension, but now in this you have 0 rifle spin and 2 miles an hour harder. So there's always going to be outliers, but it's about that consistency and trying to consistently get it. What you'll notice about these last few screenshots is that numbers don't necessarily have to specifically go along with each other. Spin rate and velocity don't necessarily go along with each other. Yes, if you have somebody throwing 45 miles an hour and you have somebody throwing 90 miles an hour, their spin rates are going to be different. But you'll have it where a spin rate is higher one pitch after and they've thrown 2 miles an hour slower. So those two don't necessarily have to go along with each other. You are looking for consistency, but it's also giving you the opportunity to sit there and say, hey, let's try this and see what happens. The kid tries to get out in front further and his rifle spin goes out the roof. Okay, fine. Now try it again. Now try it again. Now try it again. Okay, now let's bring it back a little bit. Every kid is different, or every player is different, so it doesn't always work exactly how you think it would. But you have these numbers every single time, and they can show you, hey, this is working, this is working, this is working. Whoa, when he does this, this happens. When he does this, this happens. In closing, I want to say that this ball is awesome. It's ridiculous. It allows people who just don't have access to $5,000 pieces of equipment or stuff that needs to be set up, and it allows it in a baseball. It allows you access to all of those metrics. And it's not a ball where it gives you 3 metrics, it's a ball where it gives you 9 metrics. And I can't say this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that they will be updating the app at some point here, hopefully pretty soon, with even more metrics to where you can kind of pick and choose what works best for you, what you like best, what you can see the best in terms of the way you work with people. But it's awesome. You can totally geek out and nerd out on numbers. You can, and not only just you, but if you're coaching somebody, it gives them that specific feedback right then. It gets them excited. It gets them wanting to think about what they're doing more rather than just, okay, I'm throwing and he said get my arm up. I'm throwing and he said that I'm spinning the ball too much. I'm getting underneath it. No, it's not telling you if you're staying closed long enough. It's not telling you, if you're opening up your lower half too soon or if you're opening up your lower half too late. It's not specifically telling you those things, but you see that, or you can practice some different drills, and you can see where a kid is doing these 3 things wrong, but they're doing this one thing right with this drill, and it's like, okay, why is his spin efficiency at 98% when his body is in this position, but when he's doing these 3 other things, it's at 72%, 65%, and 50%. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of break it down and say, okay, this is where you're going wrong right here. Because look, when you're doing this, you're almost perfect. And let's be honest, kids nowadays, they love this technology stuff. It's instant feedback. Yes, the velocity, they love velocity. But you give them a little physics lesson, and they start getting into spin rates, and obviously spin efficiency can be pretty easy to comprehend and understand. And then seeing how much their ball is moving, seeing the Magnus force in terms of, how much the ball is moving in this direction, whether it's a fastball or a curveball or a changeup. It's pretty addicting stuff, and will drive you to make yourself better. So I'm definitely a huge fan. I've had it for a little less than a month, but it's 100% been a ton of fun for my son and I.